Hey everybody, welcome back to Historical-ish. This is the fourth episode in the Ancient Mysteries Iceberg. If you haven't seen the first three episodes, make sure you check out the description. There'll be some links down there so you can check those out. And not to waste any more of y'all's time, we're going to get right into it. Number 11, Rome's secret name. Many historians today still debate over the original name of Rome, and even Cicero and Ennis talked about it 2,000 years ago. Some of the theories include it being named after the river Tiber, with its ancient name being Ruman or Rumin, or even a translation of Ruma, which means udder, coming from the legend of the wolf that fed the mythical founders Romulus and Remus. The first one who talked to us about the secret name of the city was Pliny. In his Naturalis Historia, he said, "Mysterious rituals forbid to pronounce the other name of Rome." This does lead to other theories of Rome being more ancient than previously thought, with different peoples existing prior to what we know as Rome, which leads me to my next topic about Romulus and Remus. Could the myth be true, and did they actually exist? Number 12, the death of Romulus. In ancient sources, one can find several theories on the death of Rome's founder and first king Romulus. He is said to have died at the age of 55 after reigning for 37 years. The authors agree that he did not die of natural causes, but disagree on the actual events. The poet Ovid writes that Romulus didn't die of natural causes, but instead ascended into heaven to become a god himself, with his wife doing the exact same thing. Another author tells the tale of Romulus not punishing criminals for the assassination of Titus Tatius, and thus leading to an uprising that eventually got Romulus killed himself. While other authors write that Romulus was extremely strict in rule and often tyrannical at times, that the patricians ended up having an uprising and taking over power. Although these are pretty wild accounts of this mythical king, most historians agree that he was not a real person, but became a story for how the Roman people fought and conquered neighboring societies and became an eventual stronghold in the region. Number 13, where is Cleopatra's tomb? Cleopatra is maybe the most famous queen of Egypt, but she was also its last. Just like Alexander, her tomb has been lost for thousands of years and has yet to be located. She's known to have been the lover of both Julius Caesar as well as Mark Antony, and in 30 BC ended up killing herself after losing a war and being captured by Roman Emperor Octavian. According to ancient historians, this was done by using a venomous snake, and was subsequently buried with her lover, Mark Antony, in a mausoleum outside the city of Alexandria. One of the most credible theories about where she is possibly buried is one that states that she is located within a site called Taposiris Magna. This site is located west of Alexandria, and within the last couple of years has been undergoing excavation efforts by archaeologists. One of the main reasons this location could be the possible final resting place of Cleopatra is that during their excavations, archaeologists uncovered a massive amount of coins that were all minted during her reign. Another theory, which is more widely accepted by archaeologists, is that she was buried within the walls of Alexandria that are now underneath the Mediterranean Sea. For around 2,000 years, Alexandria has been succumbing to coastal erosion, which includes portion of Cleopatra's palace, which is currently under the sea. If her tomb was in fact located within her palace, then it would be destroyed by the sea and unable to be located. One last little note that's pretty interesting and also leaves more questions than answers is that Cleopatra was the last in line of Ptolemy rulers, who descended from Ptolemy Soter, a general of Alexander the Great. And funny enough, we don't know the location of Alexander the Great's tomb, or any of the 15 Ptolemy rulers that ruled between the death of Alexander and the death of Cleopatra. Number 14, missing poems from the epic cycle. Two poems that everyone knows are the Iliad and the Odyssey, but what some people don't know is that there were many other epics written during the time that also detail the famous events of the Trojan War and the death of Achilles, which, if found, could lead us to find the truth about this fabled war. Just like the surviving epics, these were also composed in dactylic hexameter, and there were even surviving fragments of summaries of these works, such as Chrestomathy by Proclus, and even some of the works by Euripides. The 5 missing epics are the Cypria, the Aethiopis, the Little Iliad, the Sack of Ilium, and the Return of Telegony. All of these are separated into different books within, and all detail different stages of this war, all the way from pre-war preparations and the events which led up to the war, to the death of Ajax, Achilles, and even Odysseus. Although it is highly unlikely we'll ever find the full-length epics, if we did, it could point us towards the truth about Troy, whether the city actually existed, and if the war actually happened. Number 15, the Dead Sea Scrolls. So in 1947, on the West Bank, one of the most important discoveries was made, which led to a deeper understanding of the Bible and the histories of Judaism and Christianity as a whole. The Dead Sea Scrolls were uncovered by a young child throwing stones into caves, where he then heard a crash of shattered pottery. Within these were over 800 documents made from animal skin, papyrus, and even forged copper. Within these documents are parts of every book within the Old Testament except for the book of Esther, and there are even previously unknown hymns, prayers, and early versions of the Ten Commandments. Most of these were written between 200 BC and about 70 AD, which precedes the previously oldest known Hebrew text that has ever been found. The mystery here deals not with the authenticity of the text, but with who actually wrote them. In 164 BC, the Maccabees overthrew the Seleucid Empire that ruled over Judea, and these texts show the viewpoint of one of the many sects that were vying for power during the time. This means it does not show a universal understanding of the time period, but just one slice of a complex power struggle that was going on. Due to this complex power struggle at the time, there are two main schools of thoughts about why these texts originated. The first being that these were a way of preserving early Christian rites and rituals, with theories stating that this was a monastery that even John the Baptist studied at, with the second school of thought being a way to preserve written knowledge before the inevitable conquest by the Romans after the Jewish revolt. Although these texts are mysterious in that we don't know who or why they were written, it does open our eyes to what Jews and Christians at the time would have thought and even practiced. Number 16, Gobekli Tepe. This is an archaeological site in Turkey uncovered by Klaus Schmidt 25 years ago. And what makes this site in particular so remarkable is that it is believed to have been constructed at least 11,000 years ago, which raises many questions about the people who built it. Within the site, which is still being uncovered today, there are around 20 circular stone enclosures with stone pillars weighing more than 10 tons that are meticulously engraved with detailed art. What's weird about that is that 11,000 years ago, it is believed to be a time where humans hadn't domesticated animals, used metal tools, or even invented pottery, making it very difficult for humans to build such a complex structure. This in itself shows the importance of such a site, as the people who constructed it would have had to put in an untold amount of man-hours to carve and construct this massive stone structure. Within the site, there is evidence of wild animal bones, but no evidence of domesticated animals or grains, showing that it was most likely hunter-gatherers that built this site, with most scholars believing it was made for a religious purpose rather than a shelter, but could have been a cause for the hunter-gatherers to settle down and start farming so they could be closer to their religious center. Some fringe archaeologists believe that this site shows possibility of advanced civilizations existing prior to the Younger Dryas event. This would give an explanation to the possibility of places like Atlantis, as well as even older unknown civilizations during this time. People within this school of thought believe that humanity has been around for a lot longer than previously theorized, and that there have been numerous civilizations that have risen and fallen, but have been lost to time. This is definitely one of my favorite theories about the ancient world, because it opens up so many doors for different civilizations and events that we have never heard of and probably never will. Number 17, the Indus Valley Civilization. Now this ties into the Indus script, which I talked about in my previous video, but this is actually the mystery behind the advanced civilization that wrote this script in 2500 BC. Mohenjo-Daro is one of the biggest settlements found in the Indus Valley Civilization and is known for having complex city planning with streets, wells, trash disposal, and even drainage systems, which, to note, was well before its time. I won't get into too much of it since I detailed a bit of it in the last video, but since we can't read their mysterious script, it's hard to tell who these people were or what they believed, and all we really have to go off of is the advanced structures found in Mohenjo-Daro. Number 18, Sappho's Lost Poems. Sappho is an ancient Greek poet from the island of Lesbos who lived possibly around 625 to 570 BC and who we know very little about. After her death, a 9-volume edition of all of her works was compiled and published, but today we only have around 700 fragmented lines in total. It is theorized that due to Christian censorship, her work was repressed for being too sexual, with implied homosexuality found within it. And although this is true, almost all the poetry during the time contained these elements because it was the norm in ancient Greece, and yet none of these poems were censored by the church. These were actually preserved, so this theory holds little validity. What's more likely is that since these works were lyric rather than epic, when historians of the time began to copy down works on papyrus, the lyrical style would have not been on the top of their list, with scholars focusing much more on works from Plato and Aristotle and the likes. Also, due to her rare dialect, not many people would have been able to understand her anywhere other than her island, so her works weren't widely as accepted during the time period. Number 19, the mystery of the elongated skulls. Throughout history, there are many different instances of tribes who practice elongating their skulls for ritual purposes. This was done by taking a newborn baby whose skull was still developing and tightly binding it to force the skull upward to create the oval-shaped skull like you see here. Once the skull was fully formed, it would be permanent for the entire life of these people. This ritual is quite old, with evidence of it occurring thousands of years ago, with it still being continued today in remote areas of the Pacific Islands such as Vanuatu. They've been found all over the world in disconnected areas such as Africa, Germany, North America, Australia, and even the Caribbean islands. Some researchers believe this was done to show royalty or status within a culture, or even to differentiate themselves from neighboring societies. Other theories for doing so include spiritual, with it meaning you were closer to the gods, or even that it enhanced a person's intellect or mental capabilities. One interesting event that occurred happened in 1928 when an archaeologist in Paracas, Peru found a cemetery with elongated skulls, and after claiming to run DNA tests, says they were not of any animal or human origins, leading many alien theorists to believe that these were the body of aliens and that the goal of the elongated skulls around the world was to please the alien visitors. Many scholars assume that these DNA tests were falsified as a goal to try to boost tourism in the area, which probably was a pretty good idea, but why does everything always just lead back to aliens? And number 20, where's the Ark of the Covenant? In Jewish and Christian tradition, the Ark represents a physical manifestation of God, with claims that if touched, you would die instantly, kind of like the Nazis in Indiana Jones. Allegedly, it was carried into battle, where they were able to easily defeat empires with it, until it was finally kept within the Temple of Jerusalem, where only the high priest could visit it. In the 6th century BC, Babylon sacked Jerusalem, and that was the last known location of the Ark, with it disappearing forever after that. The most well-known theory about the Ark deals with the Queen of Sheba, who had a son with King Solomon, and when leaving the kingdom to return to Ethiopia, Menelik, Queen Sheba's son, took the Ark with him back to Ethiopia, where it still remains today. This is actually pretty interesting, considering there are a number of other religious sites within Ethiopia today that claim to have the Ark, but will not let anyone inside to see it. Only the high priest is allowed to view it, keeping the tradition of ancient Jerusalem. Most scholars do agree that if it did exist, then it probably disintegrated over time or was even destroyed and doesn't actually exist within Ethiopia or anywhere in the world anymore. Well, that about wraps it up for today's episode. I've been trying to keep these topics more short and sweet, covering the most important aspects of each topic as well as the most interesting theories behind them. But if there are any other theories that you want to share that you find are crazy or just interesting to you, please leave a comment down in the comment section below. I love reading those. And if you enjoyed watching today's video, please don't forget to like and subscribe. But at the very least, thanks for watching.